What if one morning you wake up and the sun doesn't rise again? What would happen to our planet without the sun? Would it simply turn into an ice cube? Not so fast. There are more interesting things at play than you might think. So let's find out what would happen if the sun were to stop shining. As far as we know, all life on Earth depends directly or indirectly on the sun. The sun provides us with light, warmth, and energy. It enables photosynthesis in plants and drives the climate system that distributes heat around the planet and makes life possible. But how quickly would the effects of an extinguished sun be felt around the world? In the immediate aftermath of the sun's death, there would be no change whatsoever. That's because the light and heat from the sun doesn't reach Earth instantly. It takes about 8 minutes for light to travel from the sun to Earth and a further 100,000 years for the heat to make its way through the atmosphere and warm the Earth's surface. When the sun runs out of hydrogen fuel, it will not immediately go out like a candle being blown out by wind. It will expand dramatically in a stellar evolution process known as a red giant. The sun is big enough to swallow Earth's whole when it becomes a red giant. Even worse, the sun's outer envelope would likely extend beyond the orbit of Jupiter. That means Earth would be baked by unbearable heat before it even goes dark. However, this period of extreme heat could only last a few months. As the sun's core collapses in on itself, the Earth's surface temperature will begin to drop very rapidly. Since the sun is the closest star to Earth, it has a gravitational pull on our planet. However, the gravitational force between the two bodies is relatively weak. The sun's gravity affects the tides together with the moon's gravity. If the sun disappeared tomorrow, the tides would become weaker by about 3/5, without any noticeable delay. The sky would start to darken as the sun went out. But before we get to see the darkness, we would need to experience twilight lasting several hours. After the sun ran out of fuel, its surface would no longer reflect any light, and Earth would enter a state of eternal darkness. The only light in the sky would come from the moon and other objects in the night sky, which would appear much brighter than usual. But don't be fooled. Their light is very faint and reflected light from the sun. So within a few weeks, Earth would be plunged into total darkness. A day without the sun isn't just freezing cold, but also eternally dark. On an average clear night, about 6% of the energy in the sky comes from the moon and stars. This would be barely enough to light up the darkest parts of Earth's cities, but it would be useless for anything else. People would not be able to see the stars as they would appear washed out by the surrounding gloom. Within a year, the entire planet would be buried under ice. Without the sun's energy, the water cycle would cease to exist. Oceans, lakes, and rivers would freeze over. Plants would die and collapse, causing massive extinction among animals. Humans could survive for about 3 weeks without food and 3 days without water, so everyone would not perish immediately, but their time on Earth would be limited. Humans are highly adaptable creatures, and some of them would likely survive. They would live deep underground or in bunkers built to withstand nuclear fallout and radiation. These people would likely live in constant darkness too, and would grow pale and lose their sight. But why do humans have such a strong connection to the sun? We love basking in the sun's rays on a sunny summer day. But the sun does much more than that. It is the main engine of the climate system that keeps the planet alive. The sun's rays hit Earth's surface. Some are absorbed by soil and water, and gradually transformed into heat. The warm air rises and creates currents in the atmosphere that distribute heat around the globe. This process is called convection. If the sun were to disappear, Earth's climate would collapse. Without the energy from the sun, our planet would gradually turn into an ice cube. The average surface temperature of Earth is about 14 degrees Celsius. But if the sun were to disappear, Earth's average surface temperature would drop to about 18 degrees Celsius at those temperatures. All liquid water would freeze, and most of Earth's inhabitants would die. Since the sun's rays also drive ocean currents, wind, and rainfall, it would take a while for Earth to cool down. Within 6 months, Earth would be covered in ice, including oceans, lakes, and rivers. Ice sheets would spread to the equator too. Consequences of the sun's disappearance would be devastating. All forms of life on Earth depend directly or indirectly on sunlight. Photosynthetic organisms, such as plants, use the energy of sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. Plants, algae, and some bacteria form the basis of the food chain on Earth. Without sunlight, photosynthesis would cease to exist, and the plants would die. Herbivores would then starve, and carnivores would die of hunger or be forced to cannibalize their own kind. Human beings would face the same fate, unless they had stocked up on food supplies in advance. But the sun doesn't just affect living things. Without the sun's energy, Earth's climate would change dramatically. As we said earlier, the sun's energy heats Earth's surface and drives currents in the atmosphere that distribute heat around the planet. Without the sun, these currents would cease to exist, and there would be no more wind, rain, or snow, but it would still rain, however. Water vapor in the atmosphere would condense and fall to the surface in the form of rain for quite some time. In other words, it would rain for about 7 years, until all the water vapor in the atmosphere condenses. It would also get extremely cold. Earth's average surface temperature is about 15 degrees Celsius. But without the sun, Earth's average surface temperature would drop to about 18 degrees Celsius. At those temperatures, all liquid water would freeze, and most of Earth's inhabitants would die. Even if some hardy bacteria and animals survived, they would have to face another problem. The Earth's magnetic field is partly generated by the rotation of the planet and partly by the flow of ionized particles from the sun into the Earth's atmosphere. Without the sun, the magnetic field would weaken and Earth would be more vulnerable to cosmic radiation. As a result, the atmosphere would start to thin. Eventually, all of Earth's atmosphere would dissipate into outer space. Earth's gravity would also change. The sun's gravity is relatively weak, but it still affects Earth's orbit. Without the sun's gravity, Earth would drift away from its current orbit. Most likely it would move farther away from the sun, which would make it even colder. What about the moon? Without the sun, the moon would lose its reflected light and become invisible. But it would still have its gravitational pull on Earth. The moon's gravity is about 1/6 that of Earth's gravity, so it keeps Earth's axial tilt at about 23.5 degrees. Without the moon, Earth's tilt would fluctuate more, resulting in more extreme seasons. And now the most terrifying part of this doomsday scenario? In the absence of light and heat from the sun, humans would become blind and go mad. People's eyes would not be able to adapt to the eternal darkness. After a few days, they would lose their eyesight. Furthermore, people's brains would start to shut down due to lack of sunlight, which regulates the biological clock. There are many theories to explain how people would react in a world without the sun. Some say that people would try to move to other planets. Others believe that people would try to create artificial sources of light and heat. But in reality, nothing can replace the sun. If the sun disappeared, our planet would be doomed. Unfortunately, scientists say that this is unlikely to happen soon. The sun is in the middle of its life cycle and will continue to shine brightly for another 5 billion years. But this does not mean that the sun will never run out of fuel. Stars are born, shine brightly, and eventually die. But the sun will not be Earth's last light source. When it dies, it will leave behind a dense cloud of gas and dust. From this cloud, new stars and planets will form, and life will find a way to adapt to the new conditions. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe my channel. Hit the bell icon.